Okay, it is Thursday, and I wanted to check in on what we should have found for our human adaptations from the persistence hunting clip and also the underwater spearfishing. So the main thing is that we have the ability to sweat, and we're bipedal, and we also have the ability to use tools. So that can vary from our spear gun that we had underwater to our spear that we carried on land to having buckets of water to carry in hot weather um, to prevent overheating, and also even having boats to transport food and also transport ourselves to get more food. We can swim and we can control our heart rate. So, in the beginning of the spearfishing clip, Sylvan calms himself to minimize his heartbeats per minute. It's kind of like swimming underwater. So if you're swimming underwater on one breath, you want to have as slow and fluid of a motion as possible so you prevent your heart from increasing too much, which will demand more oxygen, which will make you want to breathe even more. So it's actually kind of counterintuitive. You would think you'd want it to be over as quickly as possible, but you have to draw it out and make it kind of a patient action. Uh, and you can also train to maximize your breath economy. So free divers, people who dive without equipment and see how deep they can go, do training exercises to maximize how far they can get on one breath. We saw in the one example of the Polynesian tribe, they were able to narrow their pupils to increase their vision capabilities underwater. We can thermoregulate, so we can adjust within reason our body temperature to our new setting. So water will wick away your body's temperature about 25 times faster than air. So it'll cool you down a lot more. So we have the opposite problem hunting underwater than we do on land. On land, we don't want to overheat, but underwater, we don't want to underheat. We don't want to become hypothermic. And then we can also forage for food. So we saw the Jeju of Korea. They ate and foraged for sea life. And then meat would be encapsulating fish and the kudu. So we were able to use those and eat those as well. So we have a versatile diet. On land, we travel in groups to divide food. So the persistence hunt had 3 men, and then one of them ran after it, and the other would help carry the food. We can also carry our water. Our bipedal movement is our main advantage. So we're not very fast, but we're efficient, and we can outlast our prey because we're devoting less energy per step. In the ocean, we used a boat to transport our food, so that was one difference. The Jeju used nets and flippers to promote mobility and also carry more stuff back at once. And they can forage and chase prey underwater. And about chasing our prey, our main advantage here is actually not our efficiency. It's our tool usage and limbs. We're not very fast swimmers compared to what's living underwater already, but we can have free limbs to be able to stay down there just long enough to surprise our prey with our tools such as the spear gun, or to be able to pick them up using our opposable thumbs and take them up to the land. So that's that for our hunting clips and our human adaptations. So now what I want to talk about is, well, where are we going from here? We focused mainly on human adaptations and organism adaptations that help you survive long enough to reproduce so that you can survive as a species and evolve. So, well, if we're surviving as a species, what exactly is a species? So a species, remember, is something that is reproductively isolated. So it's a group of individuals that cannot mate outside of their group and make a viable offspring. A viable offspring means you can make a kid that can make a kid. So what is an example of violating a species? Well, there's 2 examples. Example 1 is the mule. So if you take a horse and a donkey and you cross them, if you breed them together, they do make an offspring. But the mule is sterile, it cannot reproduce. So this would mean that we are violating speciation, even though we made an offspring. It can't reproduce with another mule. The only way to make another mule is to take another horse and another donkey and cross them again. So another example of violating speciation is the liger. The liger is a mixture between the lion and the tiger. Now, the liger is an interesting case because the female liger is fertile, but the male is sterile. So even if you can make you can take a tiger and a lion and breed them together, you do make an offspring. But depending on the sex of the offspring, you can't make another kid. So that would still mean that we're violating speciation because even though the female liger is fertile, the male is not. And so that means that two ligers can't reproduce to make another one because we're limited by the male's fertility. So that said, what we're dipping into with today's activity is our dog breeding exercise, where we're breeding within one species. Okay, so it's Canis familiaris. That's the taxonomic name for a dog. So we can take all these different breeds of dogs and we can mix them together to make a new dog. So that means that all these breeds are Canis familiaris. They're all dogs. They're just different breeds of them. So there's a difference between a breed within a species and two different species. Okay, these two examples below are examples of crossing two different species. But if we take dogs, that's two different breeds within a species. So I want you to understand the difference between breeds within a species and differences of species. So that's what we're focusing on today. And that's it. Now, if you have any questions on the circumstances, feel free to email me. But that's where we are. We focused on adaptations. Now we're going to take it up a notch and look at, well, how do we get to a species? And then what we're going to do tomorrow and Friday is look at examples of how species actually form. How do we get reproductively isolated from other groups? And there's a variety of ways that can happen. So we'll tackle that on Friday.